Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving deep, really deep, into something absolutely crucial if you're facing exams: the fundamentals of business concepts. Think of this as your ultimate study guide. If you've got that Business 101 exam looming, stick with us. We're aiming to give you that structured, synthesized knowledge you need.
Okay, so let's unpack the source material. It's pretty comprehensive, basically the core text for Unit I. It covers the definitions, the different types, objectives, and really how businesses actually work.
Exactly. And our mission here isn't just to, read off a list. We're synthesizing it. We want to give you the core definitions, the structures, the objectives, basically the conceptual framework you need for real critical thinking on this subject. We're going to build a kind of narrative looking at how business structures evolved, trying to balance getting enough capital with managing personal risk. It's a fascinating story, actually. And we have to start right at the beginning. What is business? We need a really clear definition that separates it from, well, everything else people do. Right. The word itself, business, apparently comes from busy, just the state of being busy, which is nice, but not quite what you need for that exam answer. So academically speaking, what's the precise definition we absolutely need to lock down?
Okay, so there are two main criteria. First, it has to be an economic activity. That's its classification. And second, it's fundamentally concerned with earning money, making a profit. That's the crucial part. It covers all those activities: production, distribution, exchange of goods, services. But the driving force, the intent, must be profit.
The intent. Okay, so that's the dividing line. And that means we need to be super clear about what isn't business, even if it looks a bit like it.
Yes, that distinction is critical for understanding. So, say you bake cookies at home for your family. That's production, sure. But there's no market exchange, no profit motive. So, not business. Same goes for charity work or social welfare stuff. If it's done purely for altruistic reasons, without any self-interest or benefit for the person doing it, it doesn't count as business. The activity really needs to be regular, intentional, and aimed at market exchange for profit. There's a great definition from Stevenson that sums it up nicely, something like, the regular production or purchase and sale of goods undertaken with an objective of earning profit and acquiring wealth through the satisfaction of human wants.
Regularity and motive. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It's not just a one-off thing. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Moving beyond just the definition to the nature of business, the source lists 9 key points that define what business essentially is. Understanding these feels like the next level up.
Exactly. And instead of just memorizing a list of 9 things, it's helpful to think of them as maybe capturing inherent characteristics or even tensions within a business. We could maybe group them. Like, think about the tension between creating something of value and getting a return for it, and maybe another tension between certainty on risk. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that framing helps organize it. Let's run through the 9 points then, maybe linking them to those tensions.
Okay, let's try. First, creation of utilities. This is fundamental. Business has to transform things, materials, information, whatever, to make them useful. Creating utility. Like turning wood into a chair that's utility of form, or getting fruit to a city where it doesn't grow, utility of place.
That fits the creation side of the tension.
Right. Second, production, distribution, and exchange. This is the how. The pipeline. Making it, moving it, selling it. Third, continuous process. This emphasizes the regularity we mentioned. Selling your old bike isn't a business. Regularly buying and selling bikes is.
Got it. Consistent activity.
Fourth, risk and uncertainty. Okay, this is huge. It's central to that certainty-risk tension. Business is never certain. Competition, market changes, new tech, it's all risky. And this risk, this uncertainty, is actually what justifies the potential for profit. No risk. Arguably no justification for large profits.
So risk is inherent.
Absolutely. Fifth, profit motive. Back to the creation-return tension. It's the core driver, the reward for taking on that risk we just talked about. Sixth, consumers' satisfaction. This is the other side of that creation-return coin. Profit might be the motive, but satisfying customer wants is essential for the business to survive long-term. You can't have one without the other, not sustainably anyway.
Makes sense. You need happy customers to keep getting profits.
Seventh, mutual advantages. The exchange needs to work for both sides. The seller gets their profit, sure, but the buyer has to get value, satisfaction, their utility. It's a two-way street. Eighth, investment of capital. You can't just start with nothing. You need resources, money, equipment, materials to get going and keep going.
The stakes in the game?
Pretty much. And ninth, economic activity. This just brings us back full circle, reinforcing that primary classification. It's about generating wealth, allocating resources within the economy.
Okay, those 9 points, especially framed by those tensions, give a much richer picture than just the initial definition. It covers the why, the how, and the inherent challenges.
If you can explain those and how they connect, especially the profit motive balanced by consumer satisfaction and underpinned by risk, you're showing a solid grasp.
Right. So we know what business is and its core nature. Now let's look at the sheer scope of it. It's huge.
It really is. Broadly, we categorize the scope into three big areas: industry, commerce, and service enterprises. For foundational knowledge, especially for exams, we really need to get our heads around industry and commerce. They cover that whole journey from raw stuff to the final product being available. Let's start with industry. This is the production side of things. It's all about creating goods and services by using and transforming raw materials. And for students, knowing the four main subtypes of industry is absolutely crucial. They show really different ways production happens.
Yeah, let's spend a moment on these four because they range from digging stuff out of the ground to breeding animals, very different activities.
They are indeed. First up, extraction industries. These are right at the start of the chain. They're about harvesting resources directly from nature, usually from under the ground.
Like mining, drilling for oil, quarrying stone.
Exactly. And the key thing is what they extract, the coal, the oil, the iron ore, it's almost always a raw material that needs more processing by other industries before it's useful to us.
Okay, so they provide the basic inputs. What's next?
Second, construction industries. These guys take the outputs from extraction and manufacturing, things like steel, concrete, timber, and they assemble them into fixed assets. Big stuff. And they're usually categorized by what they build. Building construction, that's houses, offices, schools; infrastructure construction, roads, bridges, dams, power lines; and industrial construction, building factories, refineries, specialized plants.
Right, the builders. Okay, third.
Third is the really big one, manufacturing industries. This is where we see organized production using labor, machines, tools, maybe chemical or biological processes, transforming materials into goods. You often see two main forms here. Sometimes it's analytical, where you start with one raw material and break it down into many products, like refining crude oil into gasoline, kerosene, plastics. Other times it's synthetic, where you bring together lots of different components, often made by other manufacturers, and assemble them into something complex. Think cars, computers, airplanes.
Okay, making things, either by breaking down or building up. And the last one, genetic.
Yes, genetic industries. These are fascinating because they work with living things, capitalizing on biological reproduction for profit. They are involved in producing, breeding, or multiplying specific species of plants or animals to sell them. Think of commercial fish hatcheries, large-scale forestry operations, planting and harvesting trees, poultry farms, cattle breeding, even specialized nurseries developing new plant varieties. Animal husbandry falls here too.
So extraction, construction, manufacturing, and genetic, that covers the whole making stuff side.
Pretty much the entire production segment, yes.
But like you said, a product sitting in a factory doesn't do anyone any good until it gets to the person who needs it, which leads us nicely into commerce.
Exactly. Commerce is the bridge. It's the whole set of activities designed to overcome the barriers, the distance, the time lag, the lack of information that separate the producer from the end consumer. It's about making the flow happen.
And commerce itself breaks down into two parts: trade and the things that help trade happen, the auxiliaries of trade. Let's start with trade itself, the actual buying and selling.
Right. Trade is the core transaction. Buying and selling goods or services. We usually split it based on geography. So home trade, or domestic trade, happens within one country. And that's typically divided into wholesale trade, selling in large quantities, usually to retailers.
And retail trade, which is selling smaller amounts directly to us, the final consumers.
Precisely. Then you have foreign trade, or international trade, which is about moving goods across national borders. That includes exporting, selling goods out of the country, importing, buying goods into the country. And then there's a specific type called entry port trade. This one's important to grasp.
Entry port trade. It sounds a bit old-fashioned, but you're saying it's still relevant. Can you give an example?
Oh, absolutely relevant, especially in global logistics. The definition is basically importing goods from country A, not for your own use, but specifically to re-export them quickly to country C, usually without much, if any, processing. Think about major global hubs like, say, Singapore or Rotterdam. They might import vast amounts of electronics from China, country A, store them briefly, maybe repackage them, and then immediately ship them out to various countries in Europe or Africa. country C.
Ah, okay. So they're acting like a middleman hub, profiting from the logistics and handling, not from using the goods themselves.
Exactly that. That's entry port trade. It's all about facilitating flow between other countries.
Okay. Now, all this trade, whether domestic or foreign, doesn't just happen magically. There are obstacles, distance, time, risk, money, information. This is where the auxiliaries of trade come in, right? The support services?
Yes, exactly. Think of them as the essential support systems, the grease in the wheels of commerce. There are 6 crucial ones students need to know, and importantly, what specific barrier each one helps overcome.
Let's list them out. What's the first?
1. Transport. Pretty obvious one. It overcomes the barrier of place or distance. Trucks, trains, ships, planes, they physically move goods from where they're made to where they're needed.
Okay. Barrier of place, number 2.
2. Communication. This tackles the barrier of information or knowledge. Think telephones, internet, email. Vital for placing orders, confirming shipments, negotiating prices, sharing market data between all the parties involved.
Barrier of information makes sense.
3. Banking. This overcomes the barrier of finance. Banks provide the mechanism for payments. They offer credit, loans, basically allowing transactions to happen smoothly and securely, especially large ones, without needing sacks of cash.
Barrier of finance.
4. Insurance. This addresses the barrier of risk. Goods in transit or storage face risks, accidents, theft, damage. Insurance companies take on that risk in exchange for a premium, protecting the trader from potentially catastrophic losses.
Barrier of risk. Okay, 2 more.
5. Warehousing. This overcomes the barrier of time. Often, goods are produced in big batches, maybe seasonally, but people buy them steadily throughout the year. Warehouses provide safe storage, bridging that time gap between production and consumption.
Barrier of time. And the last one?
6. Promotion. This tackles the barrier of knowledge or awareness, specifically on the consumer side. This includes advertising, salesmanship, public relations, all the activities that inform potential customers that a product exists, what its benefits are, and where they can get it. It stimulates demand.
Barrier of knowledge. Okay, so transport, communication, banking, insurance, warehousing, promotion. Those 6 auxiliaries make trade possible on a large scale.
They absolutely do. Without them, commerce would grind to a halt pretty quickly. Now, if we step back and connect all these pieces, the definition, the nature, the scope, we can see that business isn't just a random collection of activities. It operates much more like an established system. It's a system with interconnected parts, subsystems, all working together in a coordinated way to achieve certain goals.
Yeah, thinking about it as a system is really helpful for understanding how managers have to think, right? How they allocate resources and coordinate everything. So a business enterprise has these different subsystems like production, marketing, finance, and they all have to work together. The system approach kind of simplifies this flow into a loop, right, with 4 main stages.
That's right. The classic system model breaks it down into inputs, processing, outputs, and feedback. It's a continuous cycle. Let's look at each one. 1. Inputs. This is what the business takes in from its environment to get started. The source material uses the classic 4Ms framework for this.
The 4Ms, right. That's money, material, machines, and manpower.
Exactly. Money is the capital. Material refers to the raw materials or components. Machines are the equipment and technology. And manpower is the human effort, the labor. These are the essential resources.
Quick question on manpower. In today's world, does that just mean the cost of labor, or is it broader? Does it include things like skills, expertise, management talent, that sort of human capital?
That's a really important point. While the traditional M might have implied just bodies doing work, a modern understanding, especially when we talk about the HR system, definitely includes the skills, the knowledge, the management capabilities, the intellectual contribution. It's not just raw labor. It's the entire human element that drives the process.
Yeah.
So yes, it's much broader than just headcount.
Okay, good. So those are the inputs. What happens next in the system?
2. Processing. This is the transformation stage. This is where the inputs are worked on, converted into something else. It's where those functional subsystems we mentioned earlier really operate. You've got production doing the actual making or service delivery, marketing, figuring out customer needs and how to reach them, finance managing the money flows, investments, budgets, and the HR system managing, developing, and motivating the people to manpower input.
So processing is the engine room where the work gets done, which leads to
3. Outputs. These are the results that come out of the system after processing. What does the business produce? Well, obviously, the main outputs are goods and services, the things that customers buy. But there are other outputs, too. Compensation goes out to employees and owners, investors. And crucially, the overall financial result, is an output, profit or loss.
Okay, inputs go in, get processed, outputs come out. But you mentioned a loop. What closes the loop?
4, feedback. This is what makes the system dynamic and allows it to adapt and learn. Feedback is information about the outputs that gets fed back into the system to influence future operations. So you look at the outputs. Do we make a profit? How much? Are customers happy with the product? Are sales going up or down? What are competitors doing? This information, this feedback, then influences future bothoms. Inputs, maybe we need higher quality materials or more investment. And it influences future processing. Maybe we need to change our marketing strategy, improve efficiency in production, or retrain staff. It's a constant cycle of action, result, analysis, and adjustment.
So the feedback loop is how the business corrects course and hopefully improves over time. That system view really ties it all together. Okay, we established early on that profit is the core motive, the driver. But if we stop there, we're missing a big part of the picture, right? A mature understanding means looking at all the objectives a business might have, or perhaps should have. The source categorizes these into 4 types. Thinking about these helps us understand the broader role and responsibilities of a business.
Absolutely. Profit is necessary, maybe even primary, but it's not sufficient for long-term legitimacy or success. Thinking about these 4 categories gives a much more rounded view. Imagine them like nested circles of responsibility. 1, economic objectives. This is the innermost circle. It's all about the financial health and survival of the firm itself. This obviously includes making a profit, achieving that direct economic gain. But it also includes things like establishing and maintaining market standing. Ensuring the business has a solid, long-term competitive position. It includes innovation, constantly finding better ways to do things, new products, new processes, maximizing productivity, getting the most output from your inputs, and actively trying to enhance market share, growing your slice of the pie. All focused on the firm's own economic success.
Okay, so survival and growth financially. What's the next circle out?
2, social objectives. This moves beyond the firm to its responsibility towards society and its immediate environment. How does it interact with the public? This covers things like ensuring a reliable supply of goods that people need and making sure those goods are of acceptable quality. It also includes supplying goods at a proper price, not exploiting customers. A big one here is creating employment opportunities for people in the community. And increasingly important, maintaining social environment, minimizing pollution, acting ethically, contributing positively to the community fabric.
Right, being a good corporate citizen, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay, 3rd circle.
3, human objectives. This focuses specifically on the well-being of the key people involved with the business, its direct stakeholders. So this means considering the welfare of employees, fair wages, safe conditions, opportunities for development. It means providing a fair return to investors who risk their capital. It includes ethical treatment of suppliers and timely payment to creditors. Crucially, it involves the satisfaction of consumers, delivering on promises, providing good value, and it can extend to the welfare of communities where the business operates, perhaps through local support or initiatives.
So looking after the people connected to the business. And the final outermost circle.
4, national objectives. This is the broadest perspective. How does the business contribute to the overall health and goals of the country it operates in? This includes things like efficient utilization of resources, not wasting scarce national resources. The proper payment of tax is a huge one, funding public services. The sustained generation of employment contributes nationally, not just locally. Promoting balanced development, maybe locating operations in less developed regions, not just concentrating wealth, and sometimes contributing to national self-sufficiency in critical sectors.
Wow, okay, so economic, social, human, and national objectives. Thinking about all 4 gives a really comprehensive picture of what a business does and what its impact is, far beyond just the profit line.
Exactly. And understanding these different objectives is key to analyzing business behavior and its role in society.
Okay, perfect transition. We know what business is. It's nature, scope, and objectives. Now let's get into the structure. How are businesses legally set up? This brings us right back to that core theme you mentioned. Balancing capital needs against personal risk. This section on forms of organization is always heavily tested because the legal structure dictates so much. We're going to focus on the main 3 that show that evolution: sole proprietorship, partnership, and the joint stock company.
Right. This is where the legal and financial reality really bites. How do you get the money to start and grow? And crucially, what happens to you personally if the business fails? These 3 forms offer very different answers to that question. Let's start with the simplest, the oldest form. the sole proprietorship. Often called a one-man business, though of course it can be run by anyone. It's basically established by one single person. They put in their own capital, they manage everything, they take all the risks, and if it works, they get all the profits. Edwards' definition captures it well. Initiated and operated by one individual who carries all the financial and administrative responsibility.
Okay, so think of maybe a freelance graphic designer or that local baker starting their first shop. What are the key legal features that define this structure? There were 9 listed.
Yes, and understanding these is vital for comparing it to the other forms. 1. Sole ownership. One person owns everything, the assets, the inventory, the name. 2. Sole management and control. The owner calls all the shots. No need to consult anyone. 3. Now the big one, unlimited liability. This is absolutely critical.
Explain that again. Unlimited liability means?
It means the law does not see the business as separate from the owner. If the business incurs debts it can't pay from its own assets, creditors can go after the owner's personal assets, their house, their car, their personal savings, everything. Your liability isn't capped at what you invested. It can be far more. It's a huge personal risk.
Wow, okay, that's a major point. What else?
4. Undivided risk and responsibility. If it fails, it's all on the owner. 5. Lack of legal existence. As we said, the business isn't a separate legal person. 6. Maintain secrecy. Because it's just one person, they don't have to publish accounts or share plans. Big advantage sometimes. 7. Usually, limited area of distribution, hard to grow big geographically on your own. 8. Flexibility in operation. You can change direction instantly. 9. And it's generally easy to establish and dissolve. Minimal paperwork, low setup costs.
Okay, so easy to start, total control, keep all the profit, keep things secret. But that unlimited liability sounds terrifying. Why is this structure still so common then, especially for small local businesses?
Well, those merits are really appealing, especially when you're just starting out and maybe don't have much capital anyway. It is easy to establish. You get quick decision-making. That direct link between effort and reward, sole ownership on profit, is a powerful incentive. And the secrecy can be a real competitive edge. Plus, you have total control, leading to potentially effective management, at least on a small scale.
But it clearly has limits. Those demerits must be what push people towards other structures as they grow.
Absolutely. The drawbacks really limit scale. The 2 absolute killers are: 1, limited capital. You're restricted to your own savings or what you personally can borrow. And 2, that potentially life-ruining unlimited liability. Beyond those, there's uncertain duration. If the owner gets sick, retires, or dies, the business often just ceases to exist. Decisions, while quick, can be impractical or flawed because there's no one to bounce ideas off. Getting significant loans can be tough because banks see it as high risk, and there's a lack of specialization. The owner has to be the baker, the accountant, the marketer, the HR manager. It's impossible to be expert at everything.
Okay, so the sole proprietorship is simple and direct, but risky and hard to scale. That naturally leads to thinking about bringing someone else in.
Right.
The moment that baker needs more money than they have or realizes they're terrible at accounting and needs help, they start looking for a partner. This leads us to the partnership firm. This is where 2 or more people decide to pool resources, share the work, and hopefully share the profits.
Exactly. The partnership is designed to overcome some of the key limitations of the sole proprietorship, especially the lack of capital and specialized skills, while still trying to keep things relatively simple compared to a full corporation. The source references the Nepal Partnership Act, but the core idea is universal. It's a business registered and carried on by multiple people who agree to share profits and losses, often based on a formal agreement and where partners act together or on each other's behalf.
Let's dig into the features again, comparing them to the proprietorship. What changes, especially regarding that critical issue of liability?
Okay, key features of a partnership. 1, obviously formation by 2 or more persons. 2, usually based on a mutual agreement, often written down in a partnership deed. 3, crucially, sharing profit and loss according to that agreement. 4, liability. Well, it's limited liabilities. This is a huge point.
Still unlimited. So even with partners, your personal assets are at risk.
Yes. And it can be even riskier in some ways. Typically, partners have joint and several liability. This means if the partnership fails, creditors can pursue all the partners together, jointly, or go after any single partner for the entire debt, severally, regardless of their individual share in the partnership. That partner would then have to try and recover contributions from the others.
Wow. Okay, so liability is still a major concern. What else?
Still generally, a lack of separate entity from the partners in the eyes of the law, similar to the proprietorship. 6. Now, 2 really important legal concepts unique to partnerships. Mutual agency. 6. Now, 2 really important legal concepts unique to partnerships. 7. and utmost faith, sometimes called Uberme Fidei.
Mutual agency. That sounds important. Can you break that down? What's the risk there? Like if my partner goes rogue and signs a crazy expensive contract without telling me, am I stuck with it?
You absolutely are. That's the essence and the danger of mutual agency. Each partner acts as an agent for the entire firm and for all other partners when dealing with business matters. So one partner's actions, even secret or reckless ones like taking on huge debt, legally bind the entire partnership and all the other partners. This is why utmost faith is legally required. Partners have a duty to be completely honest and transparent with each other, precisely because one person's bad decision can financially ruin everyone else involved. You have to trust your partners implicitly.
Okay, that clarifies the risk side.
Yeah.
But obviously people form partnerships, so there must be advantages over going it alone.
Definitely. The merits directly address the sole proprietorship's weaknesses. You generally have sufficient capital, or at least more capital, because you're pooling resources. Shade ownership can increase the incentive to work hard. You can bring in partners with different skills, leading to more effective management through specialization. It's still relatively easy to set up compared to a company. You can maintain a fair degree of secrecy, get facility of loan easier than a sole proprietor perhaps, and decisions can still be reasonably prompt. Partners usually have equal rights in management, though this can be varied by agreement.
But there are always buts. That unlimited liability shadow is still there, and now you have multiple bosses, essentially.
Yes, exactly. The demerits are significant. 1, unlimited liability remains the biggest personal financial danger. 2, capital, well better, is still limited compared to what a public company can raise. It's capped by the wealth of the partners. 3, ownership is difficult to transfer. If you want out, you usually need the other partner's consent, and it might even dissolve the partnership. 4, its existence is still uncertain. The death, bankruptcy, or withdrawal of just one partner can legally end the whole thing. 5, with multiple people making decisions, there's always the problem of disputes and potential for conflict. 6, and that risk of implied authority or mutual agency we discussed, you're constantly exposed to the consequences of your partner's actions.
So partnership solves the capital and skills gap a bit, but retains the unlimited liability risk and adds the complexity of managing multiple relationships and potential disagreements, which logically leads us to the next big evolutionary step. Okay, here's where things get really different. The structure that basically enables modern global capitalism. The joint stock company. This isn't just one person or a few partners. It's described as a voluntary association of people pooling resources for economic goals. But the key difference is it becomes an artificial person in the eyes of the law. That sounds like the game changer.
It absolutely is the game changer. The joint stock company is a legal entity entirely separate from the people who own it. It has its own legal identity. It uses a common seal as its official signature. It raises capital by selling shares, small pieces of ownership to potentially thousands or even millions of people, shareholders. And it's run not directly by the owners, but by a professional board of directors elected by those shareholders. This structure achieves what's called perpetual succession. The company itself keeps going, theoretically forever, regardless of who owns the shares or who's managing it at any given time. Shareholders can buy and sell shares, people can join or leave the board, but the company as a legal entity continues.
That separation is huge. Let's break down the specific features that make it so different from proprietorships and partnerships. There were 10 listed.
Yes, and these features highlight that separation and scale. 1, legal personality. As we said, it's a separate legal entity. Can own property, enter contracts, sue and be sued, all in its own name. 2, perpetual succession. Its existence isn't tied to the lifespan or involvement of any specific owner or manager. It has potentially infinite life. 3, the other massive game changer, limited liability.
Limited liability. Let's be crystal clear on this. This means
the shareholders, the owners, are generally only liable for the company's debts up to the amount they initially invested or agreed to invest in their shares, the nominal value. If the company goes bankrupt owing millions, the shareholders might lose their investment, but the creditors cannot come after their personal assets. Their house, car, savings are safe. This protection is what makes people willing to invest relatively small amounts in large, potentially risky ventures run by others.
okay, that's the big draw for investors. What else?
What for? Separation of ownership and management. The shareholders own the company, but they typically delegate the day-to-day running to elected directors and hired managers. 5, transferability of shares. This is key for investors. Shares, especially in public companies, can usually be easily bought and sold on a stock exchange, providing liquidity, a way to get your money out. 6, common seal. the official signature of the company, used on legal documents. 7. Publication of financial statement. Because ownership is widespread and liability is limited, the law usually requires companies, especially public ones, to regularly publish detailed financial reports. This means a significant loss of secrecy compared to the other forms. 7. Publication of financial statement. 8. Management by representatives, the board. 7. Publication of financial statement. 9. Collection of large capital is possible through share issuance. 7. Publication of financial statement. 10. Statutory regulations govern its formation and operation.
Okay, the advantages seem enormous, especially for large-scale operations. It solves the capital problem and the liability problem in one go.
The merits are indeed transformative, enabling businesses of a scale previously unimaginable. Limited liability attracts vast amounts of adequate capital from numerous investors. Perpetual existence provides stability and long-term planning horizons. The structure allows for hiring specialized, effective management. Its size and formal structure often give it public confidence, making it easier to secure large loans. It encourages saving and investment across society. In essence, it offers the greatest potentiality for growth, innovation, and long-term impact.
But things of buying it, and there always seems to be a but. This complexity and scale must bring a whole new set of problems, right? The source lists 10 demerits, which is quite a lot.
Yes, the scale and the separation that create the benefits also create significant drawbacks and potential pitfalls. We're shifting from the risk of personal ruin to the risk of bureaucracy, agency problems, and even potential corporate malfeasance.
So what are the key downsides students need to be aware of for the joint stock company?
Okay, let's run through them. 1, it's difficult and expensive to establish. Lots of legal loops, registration requirements, ongoing compliance costs, far more complex than the other two forms. 2, that separation of ownership and management we hailed as a feature. It creates the agency problem. Managers, agents might act in their own best interests, higher salaries, perks, empire building, rather than maximizing returns for the shareholders. Principles. 3, the necessary bureaucracy often leads to a lack of prompt decision-making. Things have to go through committees, board approvals, sometimes even shareholder votes. It can be slow to react. 4, as mentioned, there's a significant lack of secrecy due to mandatory public reporting of finances and major decisions. Competitors can see a lot. 5, there's a real risk of exploitation of general shareholders, especially small individual investors. Controlling shareholders or entrenched management might manipulate information or company resources for their own benefit. 6, the easy transferability of shares can encourage reckless speculation in the stock market, focusing on short-term share price movements rather than long-term company health. 7, power struggles can emerge, leading to groupism for authority within the board or among large shareholders, causing conflict and paralysis. 8, the sheer size and power of large corporations can lead to social abuse. The focus on profit maximization might sometimes overshadow environmental concerns, labor rights, or community well-being. This is a major area of ongoing debate and regulation. 9, there are excessive legal provisions governing almost every aspect of operation, adding complexity and cost. 10, oligarchic management control might concentrate in a few hands despite widespread share ownership.
So while it settles the liability and capital issues, it introduces challenges around governance, accountability, speed, secrecy, and potential ethical conflicts. It's a trade-off.
A very significant trade-off, yes. Hashtag tag outro. So let's wrap this up. What does this journey through definitions, scopes, objectives, and especially structures mean for you, the learner? We've basically traced how business organization has evolved. We went from the simple, high personal risk sole proprietor, through the partnership that shares risk and resources but keeps liability unlimited, all the way to the complex, large-scale joint stock company that limits personal liability but introduces whole new layers of complexity and potential conflict. You should now understand that the structure a business adopts is fundamentally a strategic choice, driven by its need for capital versus its owner's tolerance for personal financial risk.
Absolutely. And if you're prepping for that exam, let's pinpoint the key takeaways. You absolutely need to be able to synthesize those 9 characteristics defining the nature of business, especially that tension between profit and satisfying wants, all under the shadow of risk. Know the 4 types of industry: extraction, construction, manufacturing, genetic. Maybe have a specific example for each in your back pocket. Understand why the 6 auxiliaries of trade exist. What specific barrier does each one, transport, banking, insurance, etc., overcome? And critically, be able to clearly compare and contrast the liability, unlimited versus limited, and the transferability of ownership across the sole proprietorship, the partnership, and the joint stock company. That difference between unlimited and limited liability, that's probably the single most fundamental concept to nail for understanding business structures.
And thinking about that comparison leads us to a final, more provocative thought, something to mull over perhaps beyond the immediate exam syllabus. We saw that the joint stock company structure offers immense potential for growth and wealth creation, largely thanks to limited liability attracting capital. But we also saw it comes with a long list of significant drawbacks, potential exploitation, lack of accountability, even social abuse. So this deep tension, this inherent conflict between unleashing massive economic potential and managing the equally massive potential for negative consequences. What does that suggest about the necessary role of external forces? Things like government regulation, financial oversight, maybe even societal pressure. How crucial are they in ensuring that this powerful corporate engine is channeled towards activity that's not just profitable, but also genuinely sustainable and equitable in the long run?
That's a great question to leave you with. It connects these foundational concepts to the really big debates about business and society today. Use this deep dive, use these insights. You've got the definitions, the structures, the comparisons, the underlying tensions. Hopefully, you feel equipped to tackle those core business concepts with much more confidence. Good luck with the exam prep, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.